On today's show, Wes Morton of Peachtree Hoops joins me for a two-part discussion. This is part one you're about to listen to, talking about Summer League, Pascal Siakam, and more. All of that on the way.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 1523 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Monday evening into Tuesday here in mid-July. And I am joined in a second by my friend Wes Morton of Peachtree Hoops, talking about the everything, honestly, with regard to the Atlanta Hawks from Summer League, as well as some Pascal Siakam talk at the end of part two. This is part one of a two-part conversation that runs about an hour in total. So if you miss anything, come back and listen to the entire thing. Part one first, as you listen to right now, and then part two, stay tuned for that anywhere you get your podcasts. Without any further delay, here's myself and Wes Morton talking Summer League, Siakam, and more. I am joined now by Wes Morton of Peachtree Hoops. Wes, thank you for coming back to the podcast. How are you in this sort of mid-July area where things are not quite as crazy as they have been previously?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I'm doing all right. Yeah, excited to, like we've talked about, have a little bit of a break, maybe about 2 months off of, as long as no crazy news breaks, but 2 months with no actual live basketball happening.
Yeah, I should say at the top, while I have you here, I mean, you've been on the show before, but now you are the managing editor at Peachtree Hoops. So congratulations on that. Living the dream.
Thanks. Yeah, I guess so. Taking on responsibility. I mean, following in your footsteps and many other Hawks blogging legends.
Yeah, that is a job that I once held, so I understand exactly what you're dealing with, and it is definitely fun. It's still a lot of work, and that's a site that I still read all the time. So I want people to know that at the top of the podcast. We'll have you plug everything as well later on in the show. But we were talking. I was going to have you on during Summer League. We talked about this, and then I got to Vegas and had significant internet issues. So we're doing this after Summer League is over, which is maybe better in some respects. We had a chance to watch 5 games of these players. We'll probably talk about Siakam at the end of this podcast as well, because that's the topic du jour around the Hawks right now. But I wanted to dig in with someone who I know was watching about Summer League. So before I get into like the players, which is certainly the number one takeaway, because as everyone I think hopefully understands, wins and losses don't really matter that much in Summer League. But I was going through your tweets and some of the stuff that you wrote about the Hawks during the Summer League run, and you talked a lot about like Quinn Snyder ball, basically, and the way that the Hawks were playing. And I want to know what you thought about like just basically the playing style. I will just certainly say that you have to adjust for Summer League, because Summer League is just very weird overall. It's not like NBA competition in some respects. But what did you make of the way they were playing, and kind of how, like, what you noticed about how they were trying to operate on offense and defense?
Right, yeah. So definitely looked like Quinn ball. I mean, of course, that's kind of what I've been calling it, just Quinn ball, which, I mean, like you said, it's Summer League, that, these are kind of just like loose sort of things. Like they didn't look like they were running specific plays on offense, for example. But I think the number one thing to take away was just the 3-point shooting. Like they got up a ton of attempts. I know they got up a ton of attempts, I think the first game, and then this last 5th game. I think they were both over 40 attempts, but I think they ended up maybe just under 40 threes per game, something like 38 threes per game. They were putting up, maybe somewhere between 40 to 50% of their shots from the field were 3-pointers. And some of that is just having your personnel. A lot of the guys they brought into the Summer League team were just simply guys who could shoot, guys who were confident catching and shooting, or even some guys who could pull up and shoot. You think of, obviously on 2-way deals, you have Seth Lundy and Miles Norris. Lundy's out of Penn State, but he was probably the main one, because you actually heard some quotes come out from Summer League from him saying, listen, I know my place in the league is to shoot threes. Like, when I get the ball, I'm going to, maybe have someone else create for me, and I'm going to be a 3-and-D guy. So, Lundy was not shy about putting him up. He had a bunch of attempts that, some were open, some were in the guy's grill. Just kind of always showed that confidence. And I think he hit a pretty good deal of them. I got some of the stats pulled up, but that's something I think that Snyder is looking to implement around Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, because I mean those guys can shoot the ball, but it's not really their game. Like, these guys that they want to run pick and rolls, they want to get into the paint. Trae likes to get to his floater, DeJounte likes to get to his kind of elbow pull up. So I think the idea going forward, and obviously Quinn Snyder has a lot of kind of say in how he builds the team, is to put guys who are maybe 3-and-D guys who comfortable spotting up. They don't need to see the ball as much. But guys who, kind of the sort of prototypical like 3-point stance guys, where you get the ball, you shoot. If you're open around the arc, you maybe try to find someone with a quick pass, or maybe you put the ball on the floor to dribble. I think that's kind of a big thing. You really see that with the fours that Snyder's kind of brought in. Obviously, they went up and traded for Mohamed Gay. There's been a lot of hype, of course, around him, but he's super versatile. You can definitely see the upside with his handle, his ability to pull and shoot. He's also flashed his passing. Miles Norris, again, it's a stretch 4. A guy who can 6'10", who can shoot. So the idea is just to get a lot of shooting, a lot of guys who are comfortable catching and shooting, moving the ball. Obviously, there's the young guys. The majority of these guys aren't going to crack the rotation immediately. But the idea is, try to surround Trae and DeJounte with those types of guys. Obviously, they sent John Collins out to Utah. And I think the idea is to have a little bit more versatility on offense at 4 going forward, sliding DeAndre Hunter to the 4, playing some Sadiq Bey at the 4. So I think obviously shooting will be a big thing. The Hawks were, I think they finished last year lowest in attempts as a percentage of their field goal attempts from 3. And Snyder has always been, his Utah teams were basically near the top of the league. So they're going to get up more 3-point attempts going forward. And the summer league was kind of a testing ground with even, some players that may not make the team, but the same style will happen. They'll have a pick and roll, and they'll kind of flow into that kind of spread sort of basis that they had, 2 years ago when they did to the ECF and the Eastern Conference Finals, and try to get back towards, really putting up volume 3-pointers.
Today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. If you're into daily fantasy sports, you need to check out the award-winning app at PrizePicks. PrizePicks Daily Fantasy made easy. It's awesome. I've been playing there for years now, honestly. It's very easy to use at PrizePicks, whether you're doing it for the first time or you're a seasoned veteran like I happen to be. At PrizePicks, all you have to do is choose 2, 3, 4, or 5, or even 6 players, and then decide whether you actually have more or less than a certain number of points or rebounds, or maybe total yards in the NFL, total bases in baseball, strikeouts, etc. From there, with 25 times the money on your entries, it's just that easy, honestly. They offer numbers on all kinds of different sports, from the NBA, college basketball, college football, NFL, MLB, NHL, PGA, etc. And a whole bunch of done just a minute or less. It's that quick. Plus, it's just you against the numbers, making it very easy to evaluate what's going on at PrizePicks. They have safe and fast withdrawals, and they're operating in more than 30 states now, plus Canada as well. Go to PrizePicks.com and actually download the PrizePicks app right now. It's on Blend Daily Fantasy Sports. If you're a first-time user, get 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. Again, that promo code is locked on, and sign up for this deposit match up to $100. Check it out now, either on the PrizePicks app or PrizePicks.com. Yeah, the Hawks ended up actually leading the league last year in 2-point attempts, which is kind of what you're saying. Like, they took so many,
right.
It was so many 2s, so little 3s. They were 28th in the league, I think it was, at the end of the year at 3-point attempts, and the 1 attempt rate was really low, etc. That was always going to change some. I think that was kind of outlier bad in my opinion last year. Like, the way that they operated that way, I think it was a little better under Quinn, but not like a total, and I would say total overhaul when he took over, which was never. I think there was this expectation, not necessarily with people like me and you, about like what was going to change as soon as Quinn took over. And like, you can't really do that much in the middle of the season. They changed a lot of things. They changed a lot of stuff, but you can't just overhaul everything. And I think that it's summer league. You don't want to make too much of it, but they definitely are playing a little bit differently. I think organizationally, and that I think Quinn has not been shy about pointing to the fact that he wants to take a lot of threes, and that's. Both it kind of fits the personnel on some level, maybe not DeJounte, but almost everyone else at least kind of fits around that mold. And you're talking about summer league, like I pulled up the per 36 minute numbers from the summer league guys. They had, I believe it was 8 guys attempt at least 7 per 36 minutes. and that's a lot of attempts. Lundy took more than 13 per 36 minutes. Yeah. To your point earlier about like, I think he was the one that I think I was the one that he told that to. Like, he basically said, I know my job is to shoot, basically, and he's working with Kyle Korver, and like he's obviously a sort of an outlier in that way. Like, he's going to be a bomber. I think he was 0-5 or 0-6 in the finale, but his numbers were pretty good before that. He's going to shoot a lot, but guys like, even supporting guys like Brady Manick and Tyson Etienne were getting a lot of threes. Jarkel Joyner was shooting a lot of threes. But AJ took almost 10 per 36 minutes in his 2 games. Tyrese Martin was shooting a lot of threes, almost 8 per 36. Bufkin almost 8 per 36. So it was definitely an emphasis, it seemed like. And I'm glad you mentioned the thing about power forwards too, because not only with Collins, but you're going to have Saddiq Bey play a lot of power forward this year, for instance, and that's a very different entity at the power forward spot than they've had at most of the time. Even with Gallo, who was a great shooter, Gallo was still much more of a traditional power forward than someone like Saddiq Bey, who really is a combo forward, like pure floor spacer in a lot of ways. Obviously, Jalen is not quite that. He's a much different player, but I think that you'll probably see more of them playing guys who traditionally, when I say traditionally, I mean like 5 years ago plus, would have been small forwards, and they'll be playing power forward. If Hunter's still on the team, Hunter will be playing a lot of power forward this year, I have a feeling. So like that's an interesting kind of wrinkle there too that kind of plays into what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. And so, I think it kind of ties in, it's more of like a versatility thing, as opposed to just having, static guys who, maybe they can catch and shoot, but if they're crowded, they're not able to put it on the deck. Bey is a guy who looked like he was able to kind of attack closeouts, but also, obviously space the floor and be comfortable when he gets the ball, like I said, in that kind of 3-point stance. And I think that's, obviously there were other reasons for moving on from John Collins, but I think that kind of played into the calculus of if we have a Clint Capella on the floor, like we only really need one role guy. Like John could certainly before past season could hit threes, but he wasn't a dynamic shot maker. He wasn't a dynamic decision maker with the ball in his hands. He was just sort of a play finisher. So like you said, having guys who have the confidence to shoot when they're crowded, even when a closeout's coming, or maybe fake and put the ball on the deck and dribble. I think that's a big thing. So yeah, even Manick. Even honestly, even the fives. I think Cavangeli got up a few threes as well.
They all shot. everybody that played took some. Even they played Santos randomly in Game 5 last night, and even he took, I think, a couple of threes. So they didn't really play anybody that was incapable or unwilling to take a three in Summer League, which is, you don't have to have every single guy do that, but they really did not play anybody that wouldn't shoot by the end of the week.
Yeah. That's, like I said, I think that's probably a little over the top. Like, you're not going to expect, Clint Capella, if Clint Capella's on the team next year, he's not going to put up threes. Like,
no.
But the idea is, you kind of want to see what it looks like when you sort of design that offense around, okay, we're going to space the floor, maybe give some more room for our drivers, like, guys who don't generally put up a ton of threes, but you just need to have that spacing around them, just to keep the defense honest, to keep the defense, they gotta keep tabs on a guy in the corner, that, guy in the corner who can shoot, and open up that spacing for, obviously for the actual Hawks team, built around Trey and DeJounte to be able to operate if they do get downhill, off a pick and roll or something like that.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see how this sort of translates in a game. I think both, I can probably speak for you. Like, we're not trying to say Summer League is going to be this huge indicator, but it does feel like they're trying to keep everything sort of cohesive organizationally, which is usually what teams want to do. I've been to a lot of Summer Leagues, and, teams at least try to put in what they're going to do. It's a limited version of what they're going to do, but, the coaches are all there. Quinn was there all week. Like, he was not coaching the team, but Antonio Lang is going to be high up on Quinn's staff. He'll be an on-bench assistant. He was the head coach in Summer League. Brittany Donaldson was there. Like, they have all these people that are going to be core to their staff. They're trying to install what they actually do. And look, as much as the Hawks were not the sexiest Summer League team out there, they were playing Cox Pavilion all the time, the smaller arena, for instance, at 4 out of the 5 games. They did have 7 guys that played that project to be on the team. And when I use the word, obviously that includes 2 ways, but they had 7. That's more than most teams have in Summer League. They had a lot of guys who I think are trying to invest in beyond summer league in terms of like, hey, we're going to run some stuff that we're going to do in training camp. We're going to try some stuff out here. And they had practices in Vegas. They had, AJ being around the team. They definitely invested a lot in summer league, not necessarily like some teams go to Salt Lake City or go to California. They didn't do that, but they built, they kind of built a mini operation for, it's kind of the way that I would put it, for a couple of weeks, where it's a sort of a mini camp. If you're going like NFL terms, like that's the way that I would view it always. The results in the games don't really matter as much. It's more about the experience and be able to like run the stuff that you're going to run and be able to install stuff and terminology. It's something that Kobe Bufkin said a lot. I talked to him a few times in Vegas. Obviously, he's a rookie. It's a little bit different, but trying to get terminology down. And they're trying to use the terminology that they're going to use in training camp and during the season. Like it's a small thing to people on the outside like us, but for these guys that are especially going to be here for a while, knowing what you're going to see in October is a nice head start.
Right. Yeah. Definitely the terminology. I mean, one thing I will say about that is I think it was definitely harder on defense than an offense. Offense, they kind of just didn't look like they were actually calling plays. Like they weren't calling like very set plays with guys, doing any sort of intricate thing other than maybe a high pick and roll or something. But defense, you could see they tried to do a few different things. I think for a lot of stretches, they were basically just not switching. Definitely a lot less switching than I was used to seeing. And then they started kind of playing these sort of like jumbo lineups with a lot of, they had a lot of, the last two games, I think I saw a lot of, it was Norris and Gay and Kabengele, for example, like all on the floor. I don't think that's something they would actually do. But just try to get them try to get maybe some of the fours used to playing on the outside. I think they even specifically said they kind of want Gay to be able to switch up and guard some threes, for example. So, but also like, tell them not to switch, not to try to just like, get them to try to come around a screen, try to navigate that screen, go under on guys, go under, go over. And there are definitely some lapses, like that's always going to happen. You don't really have a lot of practices, some lapses on defense, and some guys sort of out of place. But trying to get that communication down, right? That's usually like the job of the five who's seeing the whole floor. I think they had some moments with Gay at the five, but when it was Kabengele or whoever else, I think they had some Manic at the five. Trying to get them to talk about the terminology, like try to call out like, okay, how are you going to operate? How are you going to defend this screen and roll, or how are you going to do these things? So that's something you can't really like. It's hard to throw a team together, and you have very limited playing time. Yeah. But I do think that'll be some things they may try to change going forward with the senior team with the Hawks. I mean, kind of depends how they want to defend with their fours going forward. John Collins had been kind of like a traditional sort of, generally did defend the paint. He was kind of like a help side four guy, but if they start deploying, DeAndre Hunter or Bay at the four a lot more, then it's going to be a lot more like sort of perimeter oriented lineups, and they're going to have to maybe switch in a different way or drop in a different way than they had been doing before. So, I mean, some of that will just be determined by the personnel, but yeah, I think getting that kind of terminology down, that's sort of a big thing, because obviously when Snyder took over last season, mid-season, like he basically kept the same sort of things as his predecessor, same sort of play calls and terminology, and you don't want to overload your players like in the middle of a season like that, try to switch things up. But now with the whole new staff, a bunch of new assistants, like I'm sure they're gonna, between now and October, they're going to try to install some new things, based on the personnel they have there, and try to figure out, what are the best pieces we can do, against certain lineups, and how do we get everyone on the same page going forward.
Yeah, and I think in general, and we'll talk about some players too in a second. It's just like I think we all talked about it back in February when they hired Snyder, like how important this first summer was going to be, and how it's like the first time he'll actually be able to put his imprint on things. But that's what we're seeing. I mean, this is a very normal offseason in a lot of ways. They got the head start, which I think was helpful, but as far as like as soon as exit interviews happen, basically it's like, all right, now it's the overhaul to full on Quinn Snyder mode, which is, again, I think it worked out very well for the Hawks to be able to bring him in February, particularly because they got to beat the market. They're paying him like half of what like Pop's making and Monty Williams is making, and I'm not sure that would have happened if they had waited. But like in addition to all that, now it's like, okay, now it's really Quinn time, which I think is probably a point of optimism for most people in comparison to where they were last year at this time, basically. I do want to get to some players, though. I want to start with a guy who actually played 2 games, and that's AJ Griffin. So he hasn't played in a while. I'm sure you got some of the questions, too, that I got. There was a conspiracy theory somewhere. I don't even know where it started about, like, him sitting out for trade purposes.
I know where it started.
It was so funny because, like, before they even went, he told the media the plan was for him to play roughly 2 games, right? He said this on the record in Atlanta before he left. Then after the second game, I flat out reported and was confirmed by the team that he wasn't playing anymore after 2 games. Like, it wasn't like there was any mystery. He was still with the team. It was the plan all the way along. Like, it's also, if you watch Summer League before at all, guys don't usually play the whole week if they're coming back as like rotation players in year 2 or year 3. So like there was nothing out of the ordinary about this, but it was just kind of funny. Anyway, between that and like he didn't play all that well. It's 2 games, but he didn't dominate in the way that like Keegan Murray did, for instance. Is like a guy that I saw him compared to. Like Hawks fans wanted to look like Keegan Murray. It's like, okay, would have been nice if he averaged 35 a game or whatever. But I guess the way that I'll ask this is like, does it matter to you at all that he didn't play that well? Like, because for me it doesn't really matter. But I want to know what you think.
I mean, no, not really. I mean, I honestly thought he played. I mean, he didn't really shoot the ball that well, but
he was fine.
I thought
he was
fine.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's not a player like Keegan Murray where you just give him the ball and like go operate and he's gonna like go dominate. Like typically, your second year guy, he's 20 years old or whatever, he'll just kind of physically just sort of be able to have his way, get to the paint and create. That's not really AJ's game. He's more of a guy who would play off of, he'll attack, maybe a switch or attack, kind of a tilted defense, and obviously he's great at spot up and shooting and all that. But I think the bigger thing to look for, and the bigger thing to take away was I think he looked great defensively. It looks like he took a lot of strides, and they kind of had him sort of defending some guards, and looked like he was moving laterally. I mean, I know he didn't get the chance to play last year, and I think that last year's summer league, and obviously missed the first month or so of the season, month and a half, but just being able to kind of get up to game speed. Looked like I said, he was moving around well. No real issues with his lower body issues he came in from college with, and like I said, it looked like he moved laterally. He kind of looked like he was always in the right place. Obviously, kind of a leader on the defense at that point. That he's been a rotation player the majority of last season. So I mean, that's really what you want to see. Like I said, he didn't really play that well offensively, shooting the ball or anything like that, but it wasn't anything to worry about. It's 2 games in summer league. Like I said, you're thrown in there with a bunch of teammates that you haven't practiced with, with the new coach, and it's small sample size, obviously, and all the way out in Vegas. Like there's so much that could happen. Like I've seen guys have great summer leagues and then come back and nothing really, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So
agreed wholeheartedly. And yeah, I mean, I beyond just not shooting the ball well, I didn't really take away much of anything. I don't think that AJ's personality is one to like take over either in that way. Like he wasn't going to be the guy that like is like, okay, this is my team now coming back for year 2 in summer league. Like that's not really the way AJ is, I think in generally a good way. Like he was just trying to be there and like help guys out for sure. And he talked about kind of being a sounding board for other guys, but he's going to play within the system. He didn't like dominate the ball. They were trying to be, actually Lang said on the record, I think to me and Lauren and Jamila, like basically they wanted him to be more aggressive. They were trying to get AJ to do more. And he it's not natural for him is the way that I think Lang described it, which is, it makes sense. Like AJ's not that guy. In high school, he did have that a little bit more. Like he was much more of an on-ball creator. I think he still has a little bit of that, but he's not going to be, I don't think ever a guy like as a primary, ball handler necessarily is going to be able to do that. I think his increased usage is more of what we saw when he had it going this year at times, when it's like more of that in-between game, more of that, like, his craft is like a pump fakes, up and unders, and that kind of stuff. He's not going to be a guy that brings the ball up the court and like goes ISO one-on-one off the dribble a ton. I don't think. Maybe he will eventually, but that's not really his game. And that's honestly what summer league is in a lot of ways for guys who score a lot. It's basically that, and that's not really what he does.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it definitely, like you said, it just tailors a different sort of, play or whatever. There's a lot of guys, like I said, not to call somebody, but I think Cleveland's in the final today, and you got a guy like Amani Bates, and this is like Amani Bates is like perfect this is like the format for him. Just give him the ball and let him go to work. But like I said, AJ is more of a guy. He's going to play off of, he's going to play off of a Trae Young. He's going to play off of a DeJounte Murray. He'll be able to attack. He'll pick his spots when you attack. But I mean, he obviously had a great rookie season. Kind of honestly more advanced than I thought. Very efficient, like you said, from basically all three levels, and not going to let 2 games and whatever,
that was the funniest thing
40 minutes played to derail that.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing for me. It was like there was this, again, I think it might just be fans that are frustrated and it's summer league or whatever, but the fact that people were really worried about his efficiency made me laugh aloud, because like that's the one thing, like he was extremely efficient this year by even normal I mean, much less being a rookie. Like I'm going to care a lot more about the way that he is able to be efficient in a regular season context than I am in 2 summer league games. So anyway, we can leave that there. I want to at least bring that up. The other guy that is probably the other headliner is Kobe Bufkin, obviously for first round pick reasons. He was not efficient either in summer league, did not shoot the ball well from 3 all week long. It was like 15%. Like it was really bad. But I thought in general was in control of things on offense, which was good. He had some turnover issues, etc. Defensively got better as the week went along. I said this last night and I got some pushback from people. So I'll throw it out there to you and see what you think. My framing was, I feel kind of the same about Bufkin that I did 2 weeks ago. And I don't know if that makes me crazy or if you agree or not, but I don't think anything really changed the way that I view him as a prospect. But I want to know what you think about him now versus how you thought about him at the draft, et cetera.
I mean, I'm generally in the same range. I might be a tiny bit, lower on him, but again, I'm not going to let, again, for all the reasons I've kind of already said before, I'm not going to let this kind of like, trump my kind of evaluation of him coming into the draft. It's not really a great format for him. Plus he's kind of, you could tell like, the plan for him this week is, okay, get him the ball, get him to do point guard stuff, get him to, come off screens and, make all these decisions. And, he just frankly just needs some work and development on certain aspects. Like, I think we've mentioned like, the kind of physicality, he's still a pretty slight guy. Yeah. 6'4", 195. Like some of that, you just got to get kind of like an NBA level sort of conditioning and get a little stronger. Sometimes he got pushed off when he was trying to finish in the paint. Other things like, very left-hand dominant. It seemed like he could definitely drive better going left as opposed to going right. So those things will kind of come in time. Like, but again, that's not really his game. His game is more complementary. I think a lot of it was just get him reps, just get him some reps on tape to see like, okay, how does he operate on the ball? But he's not going to see the ball nearly that much going forward. He is not really what he did last year at Michigan either. But there were some positives, like you said. The defense definitely got better. You could see I saw him definitely make some great plays where he's ranging over and providing help and or staying on guys around screens. Obviously still made some mistakes, but he's just really young and still pretty experienced. When you pick a guy 15th overall, you're not expecting that guy to step in. Really not expecting that guy to step into rotation most times until maybe if they kind of prove themselves during the season. It's not like you picked a guy top 5 and you're sort of expecting a little bit more immediate results. The Hawks can certainly afford to wait on him. I think there are scenarios where he's just not in the rotation at the moment. They don't necessarily need a guard. Depending on what you think of, a Patty Mills, if he could be your third guard. But I think a lot of that is just he's definitely a lot farther away from rotation minutes than I'd kind of expected coming into the draft. But that doesn't mean I'm low on him long term, year 2 or year 3 than I was coming into the draft. Like I don't think this format was really set up for him very well, and kind of being thrown into, here's this on ball role where you got to do a lot of the creation with teammates you've never played with. Like that's a tough ask. Guards. Yeah. I think in today's NBA, guards, small point guards especially have the hardest time adapting, like because the game is just so big and physical and things are moving at 1,000,000 miles per hour. Like we've seen Trae Young didn't have a great first summer league. Like, not that he's Trae Young, but
he did not.
Guards just have a very difficult time of sort of figuring out what they need to be doing, and they're kind of picking the point guard roles and trying to, create and lead that offense.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because I think maybe the reason why I didn't have my opinion change is because I expect rookie guards to be bad, for instance, like especially one. I know he's not one and done, but he's the age of a one and done. Like he's 19 years old still. Rookie guards are generally not good. I thought for sure he would take some time, and also what you said is I think maybe under discussed. And I tried to pass it along to people being there, talking to Antonio Lang in particular, but Lang kind of went out of his way multiple times to talk about how like Bufkin's never been a point guard in the way they were asking him to be the point guard of this team, which I think is a very good thing for him to experience. Summer League is a good breeding ground. And again, that's one of the reasons why what we always say, like results don't really matter that much. Summer League, it's an experiment on some level. Like they knew before the week even started, like Bufkin's never done this before. There's probably going to be some rocky moments, but they wanted him to do that. The Hawks don't really have as many examples as other teams do, but there's been times where like I think of even teams that do this in the NBA, like maybe guys who are not point guards that they just kind of want to handle those reps. I think Bufkin's a good example of that. Like I think he might be able to play point guard on the line. I'm not saying he can't, but that's not that's not the role he was drafted to be. And I said that on recent podcasts, and someone was like, "Well, what is he then?" I'm like, "Well, he's a combo. That's what he is." And I think if you had to choose position for him right now in the NBA to play minutes today, it's the 2. It's not the 1, and that's fine. He's more experienced in that realm, but given how skinny he is, given the assignment he was given to kind of just do this thing he's never done before, I expected it to be rocky. And like I thought, I don't know about you, I thought he was pretty clearly the bright spot of the last game. I mean, the Hawks played terrible on Sunday, but I thought he was pretty good. Actually, he was probably the only guy that was pretty good. I don't know. I'm not saying he was great because he wasn't, and the efficiency was questionable, and he's got to get bigger and stronger. But that's stuff that we kind of already knew, I feel like.
Yeah. I mean, that's, like you said, it kind of it's just easy to see when you see it in a game mode.
Yeah. Honestly, that's probably the biggest thing is that for as much as, and I'm not picking on anybody here, I promise, but like how many fans watched beyond the highlights of Kobe Bufkin in Michigan? In all honesty, like this is not a criticism. That's just the reality. It's the first time you're seeing your guy in your Hawks uniform. It's on national TV, and like you're going to over-index that. It's kind of the same thing. We'll talk about him later, but the first impression for a lot of Hawks fans on Mohamed Gay was that first half of the first game, and that suddenly he's like a future all-star because no one's ever seen the guy play before, and now he looks like this for 10 minutes. And if you watch the whole week, he was not that guy. But that's sticky. The first thing is sticky. I mean, it's the Trae Young. You mentioned Trae Young before. Obviously, I'm not saying Kobe Bufkin's Trae Young. He's probably not Trae Young. Trae Young is the star. But Trae was so bad in Salt Lake that it became a talking point for 6 months. I mean, it was insane. I mean, it was like a national story every day because he was so bad. So like, it is what it is. Like I just think people make too much of this stuff in general. But I do think that your point there is a good one. That even a guy who played at Michigan, like a prominent program, and was a first round pick, and like I still think that the majority of fans don't have a lot of backstory with Kobe Bufkin. They just like have heard maybe what you said or read what you said on PeachtreeHoops.com, or they've read a scouting report from Sam Vecini, or they've read a scouting report from Jonathan Gazzoni or whatever. How many people have watched more than a game of Kobe Bufkin before this week? Probably not that many.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of it's kind of like as a fan, you want to be hopeful. You want to just you want to. I think the other thing is with Summer League, you've got all 30 teams there in Las Vegas. You see some guys are just taking over. Like obviously there's a whole kind of Cam Wetmore sort of thing, And there's
Yeah,
like people already have buyer's remorse, like 5 games.
I'm gonna have to do a whole podcast about that. I feel like just because and trust me, I was someone who mentioned that I would have, from what I heard, drafted Cam Whitmore. Like I was not anti Whitmore, but I saw a lot of that today, especially after he was named Summer League MVP. And it's like, number one, I think there have been lots of guys that were not players that became Summer League MVP.
Right.
Wasn't Glenn Rice Jr. Summer League MVP?
I think it was. Hey, we don't
Tech
talk
legend.
about George,
That's why I brought him up. That's why I brought him up with you.
He was, yeah. We had Josh Selby.
There were lots of those. Anyway,
Adam Morrison.
We're off the rails, but I think that it's just as a point of clarification, like, yeah, would it have been better if he shot the ball better this week? Sure, it would have been. But like, other than that, I don't really think there was too much. And look, I mean, he won in the fourth game. I mean, he made four high level plays in a row in crunch time in the fourth game, which is like, if you want to find one moment to focus on, I would probably choose that. I'm not an optimist, as you know, Wes, but if I was a Hawks fan, I'd be like, hey, that was a pretty cool stretch from my rookie guard.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the one thing you do take away from him is, he does, he's fearless. He gets knocked down. He gets back up. Like, he was competing on defense, like you said, the entire stretch of 5 games. So he's kind of got those intangibles. Maybe the results on the floor aren't great, but you can tell he's a competitor and that he's going to work hard and look at his film and get better off of it. Yep,
I am with you on that. All right, that is it for part 1 of a 2-part conversation with myself and Wes Morton. So if you will, definitely, I encourage you to stay tuned for part 2. Anywhere you get your podcasts, either on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, it should be available in your feeds right now, and much more to come on the rest of Summer League, as well as some Siakam talk in part 2. Please subscribe to this podcast. Check out Peachtree Hoops for Wes's content, and we'll see you all next time.